High in the mountains of occupied Norway, perched on the edge of a deep gorge, stood a heavily guarded industrial plant. To the casual eye, it was just a factory, an installation producing chemicals in a remote and frozen landscape. But within its walls, a substance was being manufactured that could have altered the entire course of the war and the history of the world. This plant was producing what the Germans needed for one of the most terrifying possibilities of the age, a path toward an atomic weapon. And standing between that possibility and catastrophe was a small group of men who would have to overcome impossible terrain, brutal conditions, and a heavily defended target to deny Hitler the means to build the ultimate weapon. This is the story of one of the most daring and consequential sabotage missions in the history of warfare. This is a story about high stakes of almost unimaginable magnitude, about a handful of brave men carrying the weight of history on their shoulders, and about a mission so difficult and so important that its success or failure could have shaped the destiny of nations. It is a story of extraordinary courage, of skill and determination pushed to their limits, of ordinary men accomplishing something extraordinary against overwhelming odds. And it is a story about how a single, brilliantly executed operation, carried out by a few determined individuals, helped prevent one of the darkest possibilities of the entire war. To understand the magnitude of what these men accomplished, you have to understand what was at stake. As the war raged, scientists on both sides understood that it might be possible to harness the power of the atom to create a weapon of unprecedented, destructive force. The race to develop such a weapon was one of the most secret and most important contests of the entire war, a competition whose outcome could determine not just who won the war, but the shape of the world that would follow. And one of the key materials needed for certain approaches to developing atomic weapons was a substance known as heavy water. Heavy water is a form of water that is chemically similar to ordinary water, but differs in its atomic composition, making it useful for certain types of nuclear processes. In the context of the war, heavy water was a critical material for one of the potential pathways to developing nuclear weapons. The plant in occupied Norway was one of the few places in the world capable of producing heavy water in significant quantities. As long as that plant continued to operate, it represented a potential contribution to German efforts to develop atomic weapons. Denying the Germans access to heavy water became a matter of the highest strategic importance. The Allies understood the danger. They understood that if the Germans were able to develop atomic weapons, the consequences could be catastrophic, could potentially alter the entire outcome of the war in Germany's favor. The heavy water plant in Norway, therefore, became a target of immense importance. It had to be stopped. Its production of heavy water had to be halted. But this was far easier said than done, because the plant was located in one of the most inaccessible and well-defended places imaginable, a fortress of industry protected by geography, by harsh conditions, and by German guards. Now we should be honest about the history here, because the story of the heavy water sabotage is real and well documented, and it deserves to be told with accuracy and respect for the extraordinary men who carried it out. What follows is grounded in the genuine historical record of these operations, though we will tell it as a narrative to convey its full drama and significance. The core is true. A series of operations really was carried out to sabotage the production of heavy water at a plant in occupied Norway. And these operations, particularly a daring raid by a small team, really did succeed in dealing a significant blow to German access to this critical material. The details are recounted to convey the magnitude of the achievement and the courage it required. The challenges facing any attempt to sabotage the plant were immense. The facility was located in a remote mountainous region, accessible only with great difficulty. It was situated in a position that made it naturally defensible, protected by the rugged terrain that surrounded it. It was guarded by German forces who understood its importance, and any attacking force would have to contend not just with these defenses, but with the brutal Norwegian winter, with extreme cold, deep snow, and the harsh conditions of one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. To reach the plant, to penetrate its defenses, and to sabotage it, would require overcoming a daunting array of obstacles. An earlier attempt to attack the plant ended in tragedy, underscoring just how difficult the target was. The challenges of the terrain and the operation proved overwhelming, and the effort failed at great cost. This early failure demonstrated that taking on this target would be extraordinarily dangerous, that the obstacles were severe, and that success was far from guaranteed. But the importance of the target meant that the Allies could not simply give up. The plant was too important, the stakes too high. Another way had to be found, and so a new plan was developed, one that would rely not on a large force, but on a small team of highly trained and determined men. The plan that ultimately succeeded depended on a small group of Norwegian operatives, men who had been trained for this dangerous mission and who possessed the skills and the courage required to attempt it. These were men who understood the terrain, who could survive in the harsh mountain environment, who had the determination to carry out an operation of extreme difficulty and danger. They would have to make their way to the plant through the brutal winter landscape, penetrate its defenses, plant explosives to destroy the critical equipment, and then escape, all while evading the German forces guarding the facility. It was a mission that demanded everything they had. The conditions these men faced were almost beyond imagining. They operated in the depths of the Norwegian winter, in extreme cold, surrounded by snow and ice, in some of the most rugged terrain in Europe. They had to survive in this environment, to move through it, to endure its hardships, all while maintaining the secrecy and stealth essential to their mission. The physical demands alone were extraordinary, requiring endurance, resilience, and skill of the highest order. And all of this was in service of a mission whose difficulty and danger were matched only by its importance. When the team finally reached the plant and prepared to carry out their sabotage, they faced the critical and most dangerous phase of their mission. They had to penetrate the facility, reach the equipment that produced the heavy water, and plant their explosives, all without being detected by the German guards. This required nerve, precision, and a cool head under conditions of extreme danger. A single mistake, a single moment of bad luck could mean discovery, capture, or death. The men had to work carefully and quietly, executing their plan with skill and determination, knowing that the fate of their mission, and perhaps far more, depended on their success. And remarkably, against all the odds, they succeeded. The team managed to penetrate the plant, plant their explosives, and destroy critical equipment used in the production of heavy water, dealing a significant blow to the German effort. They accomplished what an earlier attempt had failed to achieve, what seemed almost impossible given the difficulty of the target. Through their skill, courage, and determination, they struck a major blow against the German atomic program, denying or delaying access to the heavy water that was so critical to certain approaches to developing nuclear weapons. It was a triumph of daring and skill against overwhelming obstacles. The escape that followed was itself a remarkable feat. Having carried out their sabotage, the men had to flee through the same brutal winter landscape, evading the German forces that would surely be searching for them. This escape, through the frozen wilderness in extreme conditions with the enemy in pursuit, was an ordeal in itself, requiring the same endurance and determination that had brought them to the plant in the first place. That they were able to carry out their mission and escape is a testament to their extraordinary capabilities and their courage. The significance of what these men accomplished is difficult to overstate. By sabotaging the production of heavy water, they struck a blow against one of the potential pathways to German atomic weapons. In the context of a war in which the development of such weapons could have had catastrophic consequences, this was an achievement of immense importance. The men who carried out this mission were not just sabotaging a factory. They were potentially helping to prevent one of the darkest possibilities of the entire war, helping to ensure that the ultimate weapon would not fall into the hands of one of history's most dangerous regimes. There is a profound lesson here about the impact that a small number of determined individuals can have on the course of history. The mission was carried out not by a vast army, but by a small team of brave men. And yet the potential consequences of their success were enormous, reaching far beyond the immediate destruction they caused. This demonstrates the extraordinary leverage that skilled and determined individuals can sometimes exert, the way that a single, well-executed operation can have effects far out of proportion to the number of people involved. A handful of men, through their courage and skill, helped shape the outcome of the most important contest of the age. Consider, too, what this story reveals about the importance of denying critical resources to an enemy. The strategy here was not to defeat the German atomic program directly through superior science or industry, but to deny it a critical material it needed. By targeting the heavy water plant, the Allies struck at a vulnerable point in the German effort, disrupting it not by outpacing it, but by sabotaging its supply of an essential resource. This illustrates a key principle of warfare and strategy, that sometimes the most effective way to thwart an enemy's effort is not to confront it head-on, but to deny it the resources it depends upon. It is worth reflecting on the courage and skill of the men who carried out this mission, the extraordinary qualities they brought to an extraordinary task. They faced obstacles that had defeated an earlier attempt. They operated in some of the most brutal conditions imaginable. They penetrated a heavily defended target and carried out their sabotage under conditions of extreme danger. And they did all of this in service of a mission whose importance they understood, carrying the weight of enormous stakes on their shoulders. Their courage, their skill, their determination represent the very best of what human beings are capable of when called upon to accomplish something vital and difficult. There is also a lesson here about the value of careful planning and the right approach to a difficult problem. The earlier attempt to attack the plant had failed, in part because of the immense challenges involved. The successful mission relied on a different approach, on a small team of highly skilled operatives rather than a larger force. This change in approach, this adaptation to the realities of the target, was crucial to the success of the mission. It demonstrates the importance of learning from failure, of adapting one's approach, of finding the right method for a difficult task. Sometimes success requires not just courage and determination, but the wisdom to approach a problem in the right way. The story of the heavy water sabotage also stands as a reminder of the hidden dimensions of warfare, the secret operations and covert missions that can have effects as significant as major battles. This was not a famous battle fought by great armies, but a covert operation carried out by a small team in secret. And yet its potential consequences were as significant as those of many larger and more famous engagements. It reminds us that the history of warfare is not just the history of great battles, but also the history of secret missions, covert operations, and the brave individuals who carried them out, often without recognition, in the shadows of the larger conflict. By the time the war ended, the sabotage of the heavy water plant had taken its place among the most celebrated covert operations of the entire conflict, a testament to the courage and skill of the men who carried it out, and to the immense stakes involved. The mission had struck a significant blow against the German atomic program, helping to deny one of history's most dangerous regimes access to a critical material for the ultimate weapon. It stood as a shining example of what determined individuals could accomplish, of the impact that courage and skill could have on the course of history, and of the hidden battles that helped shape the outcome of the war. So remember the men who carried out the sabotage of the heavy water plant, the brave operatives who made their way through the brutal Norwegian winter to strike at a target of immense importance. Remember the obstacles they overcame, the terrain, the conditions, the defenses, the danger. Remember that an earlier attempt had failed and that they succeeded where others could not, through their skill, courage, and determination. And remember the profound significance of what they accomplished, helping to deny Hitler a path to the ultimate weapon, demonstrating the extraordinary impact that a small number of determined individuals can have, and striking one of the most consequential blows of the entire war in a remote and frozen corner of occupied Norway.